Hello and welcome to Notes 2020. Thank you all for joining us. I'm Hima Raju from Our Ladies Miami. I'm a data scientist at Sirius, a healthcare organization. Our Ladies Miami is a global community for women and minority group in art and data sciences. This community was primarily designed to um, help members develop our skills and knowledge through collaborative and social learning. This is a meetup address. We are on all the social media platforms under the name Our Ladies Miami. So please feel free to check us out and join us. Now, I would like to introduce you to our next speaker of the session, Polley Wong, CEO of ViewSpace, who's also the co-founder of We Create Group and a lifelong advocate of workspace equality. She's going to talk about the graph database workshop that changed an industry. Polley Wong is a serial entrepreneur. She earned her master's degree in arts from the New York School of Interior Design, and she earned her bachelor's degree in science in computer engineering from Ming Chuang University in Taiwan. She is the CEO of technology and research company called ViewSpace. She's also the co-founder of um, interior and architectural firm called We Create Group. She's a very strong advocate of gender equality and workspace and sponsors many STEM related inclusive and diversity initiatives. She's been invited to be a speaker at many conferences on technology and industry related issues. She also serves as a co-chairwoman in an association related to engineering, architecture, and construction committee for the BRAR Association, which is a global industry association for virtual reality and augmented reality. Thank you. And without any further delay, please join me to welcome Polley Wong.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction. So today I'm going to share with you an experience that I had last year in a workshop that I hosted and taught a bunch of students that are adults about graph database. Now, what's more important to know about this workshop is what we are trying to do. Imagine this. You are in an industry that is desperately needing to change. It's going to morph into something else, but you don't know exactly what it's going to turn into yet. And this is the story about that. So to change the title, instead of changed, we are changing, and it will probably always be ever changing. A little bit about me. My name is Polley Wong. I am the CEO of ViewSpace. It's a technology company that creates software for interior design and architecture companies. I am also the co-founder of an interior design and architecture company called We Create Group. You will learn more about me throughout this session, but what's more important is that I have come from a computer science background, merged into an interior design and architecture background with a huge interest in human beings and systems and how everything interconnects and how everything works together. You'll be able to find me at polley@gmail.com and all of the social medias that you could find through Polley Wong. Now, a little bit of a background about our industry, which is interior design and architecture, is that it is little known that it is actually a very money-heavy industry. What that means is that everything that you need to build, whether it's a home or a restaurant or or a hospital, everything costs money. And within that, there's multiple structures, meaning that there's, from the homeowner or the property owner, you have the architect, you have designers, you have contractors, you have subcontractors, you have engineers, and all of the above. So what that means is that it is a vastly complex industry that holds a lot of, that are very, very, they have to communicate with each other very frequently. So with that said, how does the industry work? So when someone comes to you as a designer, they would come to you and say, I need this and that in my home or this and that in my restaurant. You, as a professional, you have to gather site requirements, you have to gather all the people requirements, you have to gather all the legal local building code requirements. So all this information, all this data needs to be uh, not only transferred real-time communication to a system-wide real-time, but it also needs to be compiled into usable information, from data to information, and be able to allow whoever that is driving the information flow to make reasonable decisions on a very expensive project. What that means is that the data structure is extremely important, because when the data structure is not flexible and it's not quick enough, then any bottleneck will basically snowball into a very expensive mistake. And in the industry, we call those mistakes change orders. What that means is that whether it's the homeowner changed their mind about something and they want to add something, we call that a change order. But if it was something that got miscommunicated or non-communicated, that also ends up to be a change order. So if we go back to the previous slide, change order, the number of change orders adds up to be about 33% of every single project on average. What that means is that if we could save 33% of that project, you basically earned yourself a $406 billion paycheck. So this is a very urgent and important and old problem that we need to solve. When was the last time you actually heard that a construction project was on time and on budget? Probably never, because it's very complex. And there's a reason why this problem has not been solved even till now. These are the tools that we're, as professionals, are dealing with. There's maybe 7 to 11 different file formats. There are different ways of compiling information. Say the financial department needs Excel sheets, while all that same information is being displayed in a 3D model on the architect side or on the engineer side. And say if someone changes the flooring material, the budget needs to change along with it. And that has historically been very difficult to sync up. So now we know that there's definitely like a structure problem. How does a project from start to finish work? The first thing you would do is you would first find the client. Second, as we said, we need to gather the site information. So you do a site survey, you do measure, photography, and all that. The third thing you need to do is collect the people information. The fourth thing you need to do is design. It's supposed to be fun. The fifth step is the construction and what we call documentation and construction document and administration. So this is where a lot of the project management happens. And if you need to develop some drawings for the building department, then you need to create drawings. If you need to, arrange your budget, you need to do this here. You need to put in orders for your items. This is where you do it. And then lastly, you would do the construction. And this is when designers would get a lot of phone calls that there's a lot of backtracking information and or miscommunication would happen mostly at this step. And then the last step would be staging, installation, and basically cleaning up the edges, and hopefully you will have a happy delivery. Now, this is in theory. In real life, it actually happens all simultaneously. And as you could see, there's going to be multiple problems along the way that people just can't trace back where the problem came from. So whether the problem came from site survey step number 2, or the problem came from step number 3, where someone actually thought the homeowner said this and they documented it differently, or whether it came from construction. That happens all the time, because when you open up the walls or open up the floors, you see something differently, you make a decision on the spot, probably with the homeowner, the architect doesn't know, therefore the budget changes, no one could trace back to the problem. So it becomes a project management nightmare. It really does. And that is why we desperately need a data storage solution that allows for this extremely complex and time-wise intertwining system. Neo4j happens to be very good at that. Now, we haven't got into the workshop part yet, but these are the real pain points that we're trying to solve. One is miscommunication and non-communication. The other one is inaccessibility. And this has a reason why traditionally, historically, our industry, interior design and architecture, stem from a very, I should say, academic and top-down structure, power structure, which means basically whoever has the money and the power gets to do all these things. It's only been recently that democracy exists. And so, if you think about it, now we as the people, and that includes all the professionals and all the property owners, and even people that are just thinking about doing things with their houses and their businesses, that we have the opportunity to own information when it's actually being produced. So inaccessibility has been an inherited problem historically. Third, because of the first 2 problems, there's a lot of redundant work. Usually someone from step 2 didn't know that step 3 did some work that step 2 could do. So anyway, there's a lot of repeated work that happens because of miscommunication, and because this disconnect between members basically inhibits our ability to learn as a industry as a whole. So what that means is we're recreating the wheels all the time, every project. And every company that happens to start developing their own little library or their own little method of doing things, they try to keep it within themselves as a corporate or as an individual. And that creates a lot of silos. So these cross industries, sub-industry, meaning architects and contractors, these different arms of the same project aren't learning from each other and aren't building on top of this collective knowledge. And therefore, there's a lot of redundant work. Fourth, all of the above creates a lot of waste in time, in money, which is the 5th point. And then the 6th point is distrust. And that is the harm that has been done throughout 400,000 to 600,000 years of building history, that we have always had difficulty managing project in communication and managing time and managing money. So that creates a lot of distrust within the industry. And there are solutions. It's a mix of multiple things, and VR AR happens to be a very good solution because you're communicating with visuals in 3D, and you're allowing people to be in the design. And then the other solutions that we mentioned above. But what is really, really not mentioned here is that within these 6 solutions, there's a fundamental foundation that needs to happen first, and that is data structure. How do we organize our data structure, and how do we build a team or multiple teams that could grow with the data structure and grow with the unknown of the industry and how it's progressing? Because I have a feeling that architecture and interior design is going to turn into some other type of industry, or would look a lot different than what we have now. And these could be micro teams within multiple organizations or within the same organization. And I think everything is going to be broken down into a very diverse, but sort of everything will be democratized. And that's a fundamental change that's going to happen. So why Neo4j? We need three things. One is intuitiveness. This is hardly, I think most graph databases have this, but not many could do it to this level. I think if you could draw a bubble diagram on a whiteboard, you could draw it in Neo4j. And that has been really, really valuable for us, because now we're actually needing to teach architects about Neo4j. Which architect needs to learn databases before they start doing their construction drawing? They historically didn't have to, but now we're teaching them a new language. And the easiest that language is, the higher the possibility that the whole solution will work, because we need it to be simple, to be human language and not computer language. The second thing we need from Neo4j, which has been proven to be very effective, is speed. So what you see here is the comparison between relational model and graph model. And this is, without reading it out to you, I think anyone that has tried Neo4j before knows that speed and has been a really great thing from Neo4j. So what does intuitiveness and speed add up to? It just adds up to agility. So reason being, we are a mega industry holding a lot of sub-industries that are in the process of great change. And this change, the direction of this change is unclear yet. No one really knows. I mean, everyone could guess that where this industry is going to head to, or their own sub-industry is going to head to, but no one truly knows where it's going to become. The carriage industry never knew that they're going to become obsolete when the car industry came about. All the horse barns just go out of business. So what I'm trying to get to is that it's extremely important that not only the system needs to be right, but the meta system also needs to be right. And Neo4j, fortunately, allows us to do that. This is a general picture of our stack. Basically, it concurs with Neo4j, GraphQL, and Vue.js built on top of the Google servers. Now, I think this, up to this point, it's fairly easy for people to understand why we're doing this and just, generally how we're doing this. But this is truly, one is from an industry level, and then the other one is from a system level. When you look at a team like this, how do you deploy a very new team to create a new culture and create a new way of working? So we're finally getting into the workshop. So we decided to build something called JITA. And JITA basically is an open source code base that allows us to create a tool to solve that problem that we just mentioned. So this experiment really started from a little island called Taiwan, and it started from a conference called the Open Up Summit. And about the Open Up Summit, in 2019, there was some special things about it. It came from speakers and attendees came from 9 different countries. We were talking about 4 different open tracks: open design, open source, and open other things. And what was the 2 most special things is it crosses a lot of different industries, which means that people that come here are trying to solve problems that are cross industries. So lastly, what was really, really great about it is that the female and male ratio is 55% to 45%. Anyone that has attended a tech conference knows that this is almost impossible to have more female attendees than male attendees, which is not to say that that's more important, but it is to say that it is extremely rare. And I think that calls for a shout out. So this is what the workshop actually looked like. It was not, we limited it to a certain amount of people. And as you could see here, that there's more, I would say it's generally more female than male. And it was a 2-month-long workshop. Everyone here are from different walks of life and different industries coming in and have a little bit of coding background, but we taught from scratch on what is GraphQL, what is graph database, and what is Neo4j, and we walk them through, eventually leading them to a point where they're able to contribute into this solution that we're creating called JITA. So these are just some pictures, and this is part of the conference attendees. The conference was 2 days, and we gathered all these people from around the world and had a really, really great time. What did we learn? So upgrading an industry is extremely hard because you're trying to paint a picture to multiple types of people, and that picture isn't completely clear yet. So when the industry itself is being redefined, how do you upgrade that? We start from, instead of coming up with the right answers, you need to ask the right questions first. So when every evolution starts with the necessity to grow, I think the most important thing when we started is to draw a vision. And that vision could look like anything, but these are the problems that we need to solve. What interior design means to me, and this comes down to like in the very individual level, it's very important to go from small scale to a large scale because people will easily get overwhelmed by solving too big of a problem. And so what they need to do is they need to imagine themselves in this context, and what does that mean to me? And then what does that mean to the industry? And what does that mean to society? And this is something that historically, although architecture covers a little bit, but we have a very different way of looking at society right now, and we have a different way of processing information now. So what does interior design or architecture or fill in the gap means to society? And what does that mean to the human race? Why do we even need to ask that question? It's because if we do this right, that means this problem that we're trying to solve will also be deployed perhaps out of space, perhaps on the moon, right? So everywhere that has space will probably require us thinking about it now to solve that problem because we're actually in the space age now. The second thing is every revolution starts from the bottom up. And that, if we start, and now we're talking about system and data, you have to start from data or the data of data. And that basically means that we have to train this team of designers, architects, and contractors and engineers to start thinking about data differently. And they need to start understanding how everything interconnects. And that is why the second point is the connection is more important than the data, because the data is always going to change, but the connection structure is arguably more important. The third thing is you have to start local, deploy local, meaning that it almost needs to be a microorganism first, and then you need to deploy it everywhere. And that organism needs to be living and be bred into a very diverse environment. What that means is that we have to steer away from a very sort of monoculture. The third point is to have it be borderless. What that means is that we need to have globalization in mind when we design this new system. To picture the evolution will have so many micro evolutions inside. So in order to deploy or create a team like this, you have to allow the members to be aware of this culture. The more diversity, the more sustainable this whole system is going to be. Lastly, what we really want is to allow for these different industry of teams and different purposes. Everyone wants different things. Need to be able to cross-pollinate freely. And what I'm talking about is the knowledge, the data, and the way of working. I want to end with a quote from Alvin Toffler. Illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. And I believe that Neo4j allows us to flexibly and affordably do those things quickly. Thank you. And you'll be able to find me here. And thank you for your time.